Long before the pyramids, long before written history, our ancestors built wonders we still struggle to understand. They lifted stones that modern cranes could barely move, aligned them with the sun, the moon, and the stars, and shaped temples so precise they still stand after 5,000 years. Across Europe and the Mediterranean, these ancient structures remind us that human genius is far older than we think. Who were the people who built them? What knowledge guided their hands? And why, after all our science, do their secrets remain unsolved? Subscribe and join us as we uncover the forgotten stories behind these massive prehistoric megastructures. One mystery at a time. Carnac alignments. Thousands of massive standing stones stretch across the countryside of Brittany in neat, almost impossibly organized rows. This is Carnac, one of the largest and most mysterious megalithic sites on Earth. Over 3,000 granite menhirs stand here, carefully arranged in long alignments, clusters, and even the remnants of stone circles. Some towering stones rise more than 6 meters, 20 feet high, while others barely peek above the grass. The sheer scale is staggering, as if an entire army of stones had been frozen in mid-march across the land. What makes Carnac so fascinating is its age. These stones were erected around 3,300 BCE, and some estimates suggest as early as 4,500 BCE, predating Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids of Giza, and even most early Mesopotamian civilizations. Yet, the people who raised them left no written records, no carvings, no hint of their purpose. We stand before Carnac's silent rows today with only questions. Who were the Neolithic builders that invested such colossal effort here? Why did they place these stones in precise patterns stretching over several kilometers? Were they marking astronomical events, forming a ritual site, or mapping some forgotten cosmology? No one knows for sure. Seen from above, the stones form parallel lines as if drawn by an ancient geometrician. Many believe the alignments are intentional, perhaps an ancient calendar or observatory positioned to track celestial cycles. Some rows may line up with the rising or setting sun and moon on certain days, suggesting an advanced grasp of astronomy by people we often consider Stone Age. Others speculate Carnac was a sacred ceremonial center, akin to a giant outdoor temple, where tribes gathered to worship earth and sky. Local Breton legends passed down over millennia add their own flair. One tale claims the stones were an invading Roman legion turned to stone by a powerful druid's curse. In another myth, they were once giants or ancient beings petrified where they stood. Such stories, though fantastical, hint at how deeply these monoliths have embedded themselves in cultural memory. One of Carnac's greatest mysteries is how it was built. Some of the larger stones weigh upwards of 40 to 50 tons. They would have had to be quarried and dragged across miles of landscape, long before the invention of the wheel or pulley systems. Archaeologists have found no tools or writings to explain the feat. Did these ancient people use ropes, sledges, and sheer human muscle? Or might they have possessed lost methods of transporting megaliths that we have yet to discover? Every stone in Carnac stands as proof of a tremendous coordinated effort, perhaps hundreds of workers over generations. Yet all evidence of their work and techniques has vanished, swallowed by time. Despite over 200 years of study, no definitive explanation exists for Carnac's purpose. The site was eventually abandoned. The last stones raised here stood watch as centuries and then millennia rolled by. The once lively rituals or observations now silent and forgotten. Some researchers think climate change or migration led the builders to leave, turning Carnac into a ghostly monument for posterity. Others suggest the rise of new religions rendered the old site obsolete. Whatever the cause, Carnac's stones endured alone, witnessing history's sweep while guarding their Neolithic secrets. They challenge our assumptions of primitive ancestors. Clearly, those early people knew far more about engineering, organization, and the heavens than we might assume. In the amber light of dusk, Carnac's megaliths cast long shadows like the gnomons of a prehistoric clock. Walking among them, one feels an eerie order in their placement, as if they are aligned to something beyond our understanding. Are they frozen in a ritual dance, a message in stone, or the remnants of a grand outdoor cathedral? the question hangs in the air unanswered, whispered by the Atlantic breeze. For now, the Carnac alignments remain an enigma of stone, a testament to early human ingenuity and obsession. And as we ponder these silent sentinels, we look beyond Carnac's horizon, where another ancient mystery awaits. Across the sea to the north, on a remote windswept shore, a prehistoric village lay buried beneath sand for thousands of years, perfectly preserved, and raising new questions of its own. Skara Brae. On a stormy night in the winter of 1850, nature unveiled one of prehistory's best-kept secrets. Ferocious winds tore away a grass-covered sand dune on Orkney's wild coast, exposing the outline of stone dwellings long hidden beneath. What emerged was Skara Brae, a 5,000-year-old Neolithic village so intact and well-preserved that it's often called the Scottish Pompeii. Nestled by the Bay of Scale, this cluster of 10 stone houses offers an astonishing window into daily life in 3,180 to 2,500 BCI, a time even older than Egypt's pyramids and Stonehenge. Here, instead of towering monoliths, we find the intimate details of an ancient community. Homes with stone furniture still in place, central hearths, shelves and cupboards carved from slabs, and even a rudimentary drainage system connecting what may be some of the world's earliest indoor toilets. Entering one of Skara Brae's homes today, you feel the weight of ages, yet the familiarity of shelter. Low stone walls form a snug single-room house, half sunk into the earth and insulated by midden heaps, piles of trash and turf, to ward off Orkney's chill. Each house has the same basic layout: a central fire pit, flanked by stone bed platforms, and a prominent stone dresser or shelf facing the door. One can easily imagine a family huddled around the crackling fire, smoke curling up through a roof hole, their few precious belongings stored on those very shelves. The howling North Sea wind would have been a constant companion outside, but in these sturdy homes, our Neolithic ancestors found warmth and security. Skara Brae's residents were resourceful farmers and fishermen living on the fringes of the world. They fashioned tools and decorative items from bone and stone, wove fibers into cloth, and carved mysterious patterns on stone balls whose purpose we still debate. The village even had a form of plumbing, a drainage channel running beneath the settlement, perhaps to carry waste to the sea. Such conveniences would not be reinvented in Britain for millennia. It's humbling to realize that around 3,200 BCE, humans here were already building comfortable homes with amenities, at a time when cities in Mesopotamia were only just forming and the Great Pyramid was still 600 years in the future. Yet, for all its advanced comforts, Skara Brae holds mysteries. The biggest question is why it was abandoned around 2,500 BCE. The settlement shows signs of being gradually covered by sand dunes, but whether this was due to a single cataclysmic storm or a slow encroachment over years is still debated. There's a popular legend that a great storm buried the village in a day, that perhaps the inhabitants fled in terror as sand engulfed their homes. However, evidence suggests the burial was gradual, and the village had already been deserted when the sands finally swallowed it up. So, why did the people leave? No written record, no obvious sign of disaster, and no graves at the site provide a clear answer. The climate might have grown colder and harsher, or soil exhaustion could have made farming unsustainable. Some archaeologists theorize that a sandstorm or series of storms made life increasingly untenable. Imagine sand infiltrating every corner of your house, year after year, until retreat was the only option. Others suggest social or cultural changes, perhaps a migration or a new belief system, led the community to move on. We are left with tantalizing clues. In one house, precious beads lie scattered, as if dropped and never retrieved. Did the inhabitants leave in a hurry, or calmly pack their most valuable belongings and walk away one day? The truth remains buried in the sands of prehistory. Skara Brae's abandonment is the ongoing mystery, one of those historical questions science can't fully explain. What Skara Brae does give us is an unparalleled sense of connection to Neolithic people. Standing inside a roofless house with the stone dresser before you, you can almost see a Neolithic farmer placing a prize-carved bone or pottery bowl on its shelf some 5,000 years ago. You can trace their daily routine, tending fires, cooking fish and barley over the hearth, sleeping on stone beds piled with heather and furs, and gathering with neighbors just a few steps away in the identical dwelling next door. The village layout even hints at a form of community planning, houses linked by covered passageways, protecting inhabitants from weather as they move between homes. It suggests a tight-knit society, sharing resources and stories through the long winter nights. Today, Skara Brae sits on a shoreline prone to erosion, protected by seawalls, but ever at Mother Nature's mercy. Visitors peer into these roofless abodes and marvel at how modern this Stone Age village feels. It reminds us that human ingenuity is ancient. These people, though lacking metal or writing, solved the problems of shelter, storage, and sanitation in clever ways. Yet, despite our familiarity with their homes, their voices are lost. We know nothing of their language, their beliefs, or the legends they told by the fire. All we have are artifacts, beads of jet, richly engraved bone pins, ceramic pots, and enigmatic stone orbs with geometric patterns. Are those carved balls toys, weapons, ritual objects? We can only guess. As the daylight fades over Skara Brae, the village's stone outlines cast long shadows on the sand, looking like foundations of time-worn memories. One can almost sense the echoes of laughter, the cries of children, the crackle of hearth fires carried on the ocean breeze. Then, a wave crashes on the nearby shore, and the illusion breaks. We are alone with the ruins and our questions. Skara Brae, meticulously preserved, yet guarding the secret of its people's departure, leaves us wondering, what happened to them? In this way, the site's very completeness becomes haunting, a ghost village, awaiting occupants that will never return. From this abandoned Neolithic hamlet, we turn our eyes to another marvel across the waters. Far to the south in Ireland, an ancient monument stands not as a home for the living, but as a monument for the dead. One that dramatically comes alive with sunlight on the shortest day of the year. As mysterious as Skara Brae's disappearance is, our next site holds a celestial secret in its design, aligning heaven and earth in a way that still captivates all who witness it. Newgrange. In the verdant Boyne Valley of Ireland rises a great grassy mound, looking from afar like a gentle hill. But this is no ordinary hill. It's Newgrange, a 5,200-year-old passage tomb and temple that many dub the Stone Age Cathedral of Ireland. Constructed around 3200 BCE, 6 centuries older than the oldest Egyptian pyramid and about 700 years older than Stonehenge, Newgrange is a masterpiece of Neolithic engineering, astronomy, and art. At 85 meters, 280 feet, across and 13 meters, 43 feet, high, the mound contains a long stone-lined passage leading to a cruciform inner chamber under a corbelled stone roof. It's estimated that 200,000 tons of rock and earth were used to build this monument, an immense undertaking for people with no metal tools or wheeled transport. Clearly, whoever built Newgrange had extraordinary determination and skill, but why they built it is a mystery that merges myth and science in equal measure. Newgrange's most famous feature is its spectacular alignment with the winter solstice. At dawn on the shortest day of the year, midwinter, something almost magical occurs. A shaft of sunlight pierces a small opening above the tomb entrance, the so-called roof box, and travels 18 meters down the passage to flood the inner chamber with golden light. For about 17 minutes on the mornings around the solstice, if skies are clear, the dark, silent tomb is illuminated by the rising sun. This Stone Age light show is one of the oldest astronomically aligned events ever discovered. Imagine the experience over 5 millennia ago. In the pre-dawn darkness, a select group, perhaps priests or chieftain's family, huddles inside the chamber, surrounded by the bones of ancestors. As the sun crests the horizon, a narrow beam slowly creeps along the passage floor, climbing inch by inch until it bursts into the central chamber, banishing darkness and bathing the carved stone walls in warmth. It's not hard to see why many believe Newgrange was as much a temple as a tomb. A place where Neolithic people orchestrated a meeting between earth and sky, life and death, on the year's pivotal day. The precision of this alignment, calculated to capture the sun's rays on a specific few days out of the year, speaks to an advanced knowledge of astronomy for a supposedly primitive culture. For millennia after its Neolithic creators, Newgrange's true purpose was forgotten. By medieval times, locals thought the mysterious mound was a fairy dwelling or the house of a god. In Irish mythology, it was called Brúna Boina, the mythical home of Dagda, chief of the Tuatha De Danann, a race of supernatural beings, and his son, Oengus. Legend held that time moved differently inside. A single night in Newgrange could span years in the outside world. Such stories underscore the aura of awe and sanctity that clung to Newgrange even when its original builders' names were lost. The site was rediscovered in 1699 when a landowner began quarrying the mound for stone, only to uncover the elaborate entrance stone, a massive slab etched with Triskelion spiral carvings, and realized this was no ordinary hill. Excavations in the 20th century revealed the full glory of the structure and restored the roof box that makes the solstice illumination possible. When archaeologist Michael O'Kelly first witnessed the solstice sun in Newgrange's chamber in 1967, he became the first person in perhaps 5,000 years to see what the tomb's architects had intended. One can imagine his heart pounding as that ancient light struck the chamber once more, a connection across epochs. Beyond the solstice event, Newgrange intrigues with its art and artifacts. The entrance curbstone is covered in beautiful triple spirals and lozenges, enigmatic symbols whose meaning we can only guess. Do the spirals represent the sun, cycles of life, or something transcendental like the journey of the soul? Similar carvings appear on interior stones, suggesting a coherent symbolic language, perhaps a prayer or dedication carved in stone. Inside, basins of stone were found, likely to hold remains or offerings. The tomb did contain cremated human bones, suggesting it was indeed used as a burial place for an elite group, likely tribal leaders or shamans. Recent DNA analysis of one interred man revealed a startling fact. His parents were closely related, possibly brother and sister, hinting that he might have been the product of an elite or royal bloodline kept pure through incest. This finding supports the theory that Newgrange was the burial site of a ruling dynasty, a line of god kings who wielded both secular and spiritual power. Much like Egyptian pharaohs or Inca rulers, these Neolithic Irish elites may have been seen as intermediaries with the gods, meriting a grand final resting place aligned with the sun. The engineering of Newgrange is itself a mystery. The corbelled roof of the central chamber has remained watertight for over 5 millennia, not a drop of rain seeping through. How did these ancient builders, with only stone tools, manage such precise construction? The stones used in Newgrange's facade, white quartz and dark rounded cobbles, were sourced from mountains and seashores dozens of kilometers away, meaning massive rocks were transported long distances without wheels. The inner passage orthostats, standing slabs, each weigh several tons. We can picture hundreds of workers hauling these slabs on log rollers or sledges over hills and rivers, a colossal communal effort, likely fueled by spiritual zeal. In total, it's estimated 300 workers might have labored for decades to complete Newgrange. Such investment suggests Newgrange was of immense importance to its society, perhaps the centerpiece of a broader ritual landscape. In fact, Newgrange is just one of a group of monuments. Nearby are the large mounds of Noth and Douth, and many smaller tombs. The entire area, now called Brúna Boin, was a ceremonial complex. What cosmic or religious drama played out among these monuments? We can only imagine priests watching the skies, scheduling ceremonies by sun and moon, guiding their people's agricultural and spiritual life by the great celestial dance overhead. As with any great mystery, Newgrange has inspired speculation. Over the centuries, amateur theorists have attributed it to everyone, from Phoenicians to Egyptians to lost Atlanteans, unable to believe Ireland's Stone Age farmers could create something so grand. Mainstream archaeology firmly credits local Neolithic people, specifically early agricultural communities who were descendants of migrating Neolithic farmers from continental Europe. These people had settled Ireland a couple of thousand years earlier and developed a sophisticated society capable of large-scale projects. Yet, questions linger. Did knowledge of building such tombs spread from elsewhere, or was it invented independently? Some see similarities between Newgrange and the Great Passage tomb of Malta in Orkney, Scotland, suggesting ideas or even people traveled and shared construction techniques across the sea. If so, who were these Neolithic architects connecting far-flung lands? And how did they hold such authority to marshal labor and resources? Every answer spawns new mysteries. Visiting Newgrange, one is struck by the humbling realization that this earthen mound is older than recorded history, yet it embodies an understanding of nature's patterns that we are only rediscovering. On the winter solstice, when that sunrise pierces the tomb, it symbolizes perhaps the triumph of light over darkness, the promise of rebirth of the sun, a reassurance that even at the nadir of winter, life will continue. It's poignant to think that for thousands of years, people may have gathered at Newgrange on that cold December morning to witness this miracle, bridging the mortal and the divine. What prayers or chants accompanied the sunlight? Did the onlookers believe their deceased ancestors were traveling on that sunbeam to the afterlife, or that the sun was fertilizing the earth for the new year? We can almost hear an ancient chorus echoing against the stone walls as the chamber blazes bright, an annual ritual now lost. When the sunbeam recedes and the chamber returns to darkness, we are left with more questions than answers. Newgrange keeps its secrets well. We know what happens here on the solstice, but the why, the exact religious or cultural significance, is as enigmatic as ever. This mound, enduring through epochs of change, quietly mocks the idea that we fully understand our ancestors. Science can explain the alignment, measure the carbon dates, analyze the bones, but it can't yet explain the mind and spirit of Newgrange's builders. In that sense, Newgrange remains a beautiful riddle carved in stone, one we are still deciphering. Leaving the green hills of Ireland and its sunlit tomb behind, our journey now turns back to the north, to a rugged isle where another group of prehistoric Britons raised a ring of stones that converse not with the sun, but with the mysterious rhythms of the moon. On a remote Scottish moor, monoliths stand in a cruciform pattern, aligned to lunar cycles that span decades. As day yields to night, we travel to the Outer Hebrides, where the Callanish stones await under starlight. Callanish stones. On the Isle of Lewis off Scotland's northwest coast, a group of ancient stones stands like a ring of silent sentinels against the gray sky. This is Callanish, Callanois, a 5,000-year-old megalithic site older than Stonehenge, and nearly as venerated. The Callanish stones form a remarkable pattern, a central stone circle of tall, Lewisian gneiss monoliths, from which radiate stone alignments in the shape of a giant cross or star. Approaching Callanish, one sees a high central monolith nearly 5 meters tall, surrounded by a ring of stones, with rows of smaller standing stones stretching to the north, south, east, and west. It's as if the layout mirrors a cosmic compass. This site, erected around 2900 to 2600 BCE, exudes a powerful sense of the sacred. The stones, weathered and lichen-speckled, have witnessed countless moons and seasons, and they carry a palpable aura of mystery. Local folklore calls the stones the Skara Brae, or false men, claiming they were once giants turned to stone for defying Christianity. Indeed, one legend says that when St. Kieran came to Lewis to convert the pagans, the giants who inhabited the island refused to abandon their old beliefs and were petrified as punishment. Another tale speaks of a shining one, a glowing spirit or deity, who walks among the stones at dawn on midsummer morning, heralded by the call of a cuckoo. The lore hints that Callanish was a place of ancient worship, so potent that its memory survived as myth long after its true purpose was lost. By day, the stones of Callanish cast long shadows over the heather. By night, under a blanket of stars, they take on a more mystical role. Unlike Stonehenge's famous solar alignments, Callanish appears tuned to the cycles of the moon. In particular, the site is renowned for marking an extraordinary lunar event that occurs only once every 18.6 years, the major lunar standstill. At this standstill, the full moon reaches its southernmost extreme in the sky, rising and setting at unusual points on the horizon. At Callanish, this translates into a breathtaking spectacle. For a brief period, the full moon rises from behind the distant hills, a range locals call Sleeping Beauty for its shape of a reclining woman. and appears to hover just above the horizon, rolling along the hill's contours. To an observer standing at the stones, the moon at its standstill seems to float low through the stone avenues. According to researchers, when the moon rises to its maximum northern position and then sets in the southwest, it can be seen passing directly over the Callanish circle. At one key moment, a beam of moonlight is said to extend down the stone avenue to the circle, almost as if inviting someone to walk in moonlight. If a person stands at a certain point on a rocky knoll south of the site, the full moon will appear to encircle them, reborn in the cradle of the stones. Such an alignment is too specific to be coincidence. It strongly suggests that the builders of Callanish deliberately arranged the stones to track the lunar standstill, perhaps for ceremonial or calendrical reasons. One can imagine the awe these Neolithic people must have felt as they watched the queen of the night sky dip low and glide along the horizon, seemingly dancing with their standing stones. Why was the moon so important to them? Perhaps as agriculturalists and seafarers, the moon's cycles, tides, months were critical, or perhaps it symbolized a deity, maybe a mother goddess or a timekeeper of women's menstrual and life cycles. Some modern interpretations see in Callanish's alignments a kind of lunar fertility ritual. The nearby hills, Sleeping Beauty, resemble a reclining pregnant goddess, and the moon's path along her form, touching her body at key points, could have been mythologized as a celestial impregnation and rebirth event. In this reading, the stones, the landscape, and the sky together formed a grand stage for reenacting cosmic stories of birth, death, and renewal. Beyond speculation, what we know is that Callanish was indeed a focus of ritual activity for many centuries. Archaeologists have found evidence of a chambered tomb within the circle, now ruined, that contained cremated human remains and pottery shards. This suggests that, like Newgrange, Callanish had funerary or ancestral significance. Perhaps important individuals were interred here, and their spirits invoked during ceremonies timed to heavenly events. The site appears to have been constructed in stages, evolving over 1,000 years, the main circle and avenues around 3000 to 2500 BCE, and the small tomb, added later around 2000 BCE. By around 1500 BCE, it seems the complex fell out of use and was slowly covered by encroaching peat. In fact, by the time locals began cutting peat in the 19th century, some stones were buried up to their tops. It was only when Sir James Matheson had the peat removed in 1857 that the full height of the stones was revealed again. One wonders, why did the rituals stop? Did the society change or move? Whatever the reason, Callanish slept under a blanket of peat for millennia, preserving its sanctity. Walking among the Callanish stones today, especially in the dim light of dusk or dawn, you can feel an almost otherworldly atmosphere. The stones, streaked with white quartz veins, seem to glow in low light, each with a unique twisted shape thanks to the ancient Louisian gneisses patterns. They stand in relative solitude on a ridge overlooking Loch Roag, with only the rugged hills and the endless sky as company. In such a setting, it's easy to sense why this location was chosen. It has a 360-degree panorama of the horizon, perfect for watching the movements of sun, moon, and stars. And indeed, besides the lunar alignment, Callanish's rows also have general solar alignments. Some stones line up with the sunrise or sunset at equinoxes and solstices and possibly star alignments. It was a Neolithic observatory, but one likely imbued with spiritual meaning. A temple under the open sky. The mystery of Callanish lies in the mind of its makers. We see their technical ability to track a complex 18.6-year cycle. What we don't fully grasp is the worldview that drove them to do it. Did they fear the moon might wander off course if not revered? Did they celebrate the standstill as a time of particular cosmic power or ancestral communion? The folklore about the Shining One at midsummer hints that even in relatively recent times, people felt a supernatural presence at Callanish around solstice time. Perhaps that is an echo of real ceremonies where a priest, dressed in white maybe, would walk the stone avenue at dawn, impersonating a solar or lunar deity greeted by the faithful. The site's very design invites such imagery. The long, northeast avenue of double stones feels like a processional way, meant for something or someone important to walk toward the circle from the horizon. One folklore interpretation suggests the Shining One is a solar figure, like the Celtic sun god Lugh, but intriguingly the story places him at midsummer dawn, not aligning with what we know scientifically. Callanish's strongest alignment is lunar, not the midsummer sun. Could the folk memory have conflated different rituals over time? Or was midsummer another significant gathering at Callanish for unrelated reasons? The truth hides in a haze of time. What is certain is that Callanish still captivates us. During the last major lunar standstill, in 2006 and again in 2025, archaeologists and enthusiasts gathered to watch the moon's dance with the stones, essentially reliving a Bronze Age spectacle. To see the full moon skim the southern horizon and align with Sleeping Beauty, as described, is to feel for a moment the elation those ancient sky watchers must have felt when their calculations proved true and the heavens acknowledged their stone temple. In that alignment of moon, land, and human handiwork, there is a profound sense of connection, a reminder that even 5,000 years ago, humans were carefully observing the universe, seeking patterns and meaning in the sky. As the moonlight fades and dawn breaks over Callanish, we take our leave of these enchanted stones of the north. Each stands where it was planted so long ago, keeping its vigil and silently marking the great metronome of the heavens. From the windswept Hebrides, we journey now to the sun-baked plains of the Iberian Peninsula, where a circle of stones, even older than Callanish, lies hidden among cork oaks. There, in Portugal, a site known as Almendres holds the distinction of being one of Europe's oldest and largest megalithic complexes, a place where Neolithic people gathered thousands of years before Stonehenge, leaving behind another unanswered riddle in rock. Stone circles of Almendres. Deep in the Alentejo region of southern Portugal, atop a gentle hill dotted with olive and cork oak trees, stands a congregation of ancient stones that predates most of Europe's known monuments. This is the cromlech of Almendres, a megalithic site so old and expansive that it's often called the oldest Stonehenge, though its form is different, and the largest assemblage of standing stones on the Iberian Peninsula. Here, about 95 weathered granite monoliths stand in several ovoid rings and ellipses, forming a kind of twin stone circle arrangement. The stones vary in size, some waist-high, others towering nearly 3 meters, and many are thick and rounded, like ancient eggs or pillars emerging from the earth. Amazingly, Almendres was built over 7,000 years ago in multiple phases. The earliest stones were raised around 6000 BCE, early Neolithic, with additions around 5000 BCE, and adjustments as late as 4000 BCE. That means Almendres had already stood for a millennium by the time the first pyramids were being conceived in Egypt. This antiquity is mind-bending. The site's origins lie over 8,000 years in the past, when Europe's first farmers were just settling down. Thousands of years before, even the megalithic tombs of Ireland or Britain took shape. Discovered relatively recently, it was only identified in 1966 by a researcher mapping geology. Almendres still doesn't have the fame of Stonehenge, but it is arguably as important. It offers a glimpse into a very early religious or communal practice. The stones are arranged in 2 main groups adjacent to each other. The Western group, smaller stones in tighter rings, and the Eastern group, larger stones in looser rings, stones forming a broader ellipse. It seems the site started with a smaller circle, then later a larger set of stones was erected nearby, perhaps as the community grew or their rituals evolved. Some stones are engraved with faint patterns, dimples and serpentine lines, that likely had symbolic significance, though erosion has blurred them. The entire complex is oriented in particular directions. Notably, archaeologists have noted alignments toward the point of sunrise on the spring and autumn equinoxes. Indeed, 92 of the menhirs form 2 grounds oriented to different directions associated with the equinox sunrises. It appears Almendres may have functioned as a sort of astronomical calendar or ceremonial space, marking the shifting seasons. Imagine the scene here in the early Neolithic, around 6,000 years ago. The people who built Almendres were among the first in Europe to practice agriculture. They lived in small villages, cultivated wheat and barley, herded goats and sheep. Yet, they took time away from subsistence tasks to undertake a massive project, hauling rough granite stones from local sources, sometimes over a kilometer away, and erecting them in deliberate patterns on this hill. Why? Perhaps to worship or commune with nature's forces, the sun, the earth, ancestral spirits, or to unite their community through shared ritual. Some archaeologists suspect a spiritual or religious purpose. Others say it might have been an early observatory to time planting and harvesting by watching the sun's position. These uses are not mutually exclusive. Likely at Almendres, ritual and astronomy were one. To an early farmer, knowing when the equinox came to start planting was a matter of survival, and it could easily have been clothed in ceremony and myth, enacted within the ring of stones. Almendres has two particularly interesting monoliths. A bit away from the main cromlech stands a single large menhir, standing stone, known as the Almendres menhir, about 4 meters tall, which aligns with the cromlech and the sunrise. It might have served as a marker or signpost for travelers approaching the sacred hill. Also, one stone in the circle has a small hole or window carved through it, which some suggest could have been used to sight the rising sun or a star on a certain day. Essentially, a prehistoric viewfinder for celestial events. This is speculative but tantalizing. One could picture shamans or elders watching the sky through that stone window, waiting for a prophesied alignment. One of Almendres' fascinating aspects is that it evolved over time. Unlike Stonehenge, built in stages over a relatively shorter span, Almendres saw use for possibly 2,000 years. The people who started it around 6000 BCE might have been long gone or culturally transformed by the time the last modifications were made circa 4000 BCE. This indicates continuity. Later generations found meaning in the site and added their own mark. Eventually, though, like many megalithic places, Almendres was abandoned. As the Chalcolithic and Bronze Age came, new customs, and possibly deities, may have replaced the old. The stones remained, gradually forgotten. The local folklore from the pre-discovery era is sparse, but in many Iberian regions, such stones were called pedras talhas, carved stones, or associated with giants and magic and legend. It wouldn't be surprising if Almendres had a reputation among local shepherds as a place of enchantment or bad luck. Often these ancient sites did. Now, after its rediscovery in the 20th century, Almendres stands quietly under the open sky, accessible down a rural dirt road. Visitors often find it deserted and tranquil, with only chirping birds and the rustle of cork oak leaves. Stepping into the circles, you become acutely aware of the landscape's gentle energies, rolling hills, distant mountains, the arc of the sun overhead. One cannot help but try to read the arrangement. Why are these stones clustered here, those ones spaced there? Is there a deliberate gap pointing somewhere? In fact, studies have noted certain orientations, for instance, an axis of symmetry in the layout that roughly points east-west, and concentrations of stones toward the east, hinting at an emphasis on sunrise ceremonies. The equinox sunrise theory is supported by how some stones seem to frame the equinoctial point on the horizon. If true, picture the dawn of March 20th or September 22nd, circa 5000 BCI. Villagers gather in the chill pre-dawn, standing among the stones, eyes fixed on the eastern skyline. The first gleam of the sun on that special day would shoot between two particular stones, announcing spring or autumn's arrival. Cheers or chants might erupt, fires lit, offerings made to ensure a bountiful season. Almendres' purpose, however, is not definitively solved. Archaeologists label it a ceremonial or astronomical complex, but much about it remains conjecture. No written clues exist from such deep prehistory. We don't know the gods these people worshipped, the language they spoke, or the meaning of the symbols they etched. The engravings on some menhirs, faint cup marks, lines, even a schematic human shape on one, are mysterious. One taller stone has what could be a representation of a crooked staff or serpent carved on it. Is it a deity's symbol or something to do with the cycles of nature? The lack of clear answers leaves Almendres open to our imagination. What stands out, though, is how sophisticated early Neolithic Europeans were. The Almendres builders were among the first wave of farming communities west of the Mediterranean's shores. yet they organized large-scale architecture with sightlines to the cosmos. This speaks to a continuity of human curiosity. As soon as we settled down from nomadic life, we started building temples and calendars, seeking to understand our place in the universe. Today, as the sun sets behind the hills of Evora, the stones of Almendres cast elongated shadows over the dry earth. If you wander the site at twilight, you might catch the silhouettes of these ancient sentinels aligned with the dim glow of a distant star or the rising full moon. The feeling is profoundly mysterious and cinematic. One can almost see figures from an immemorial past flickering between the stones, hear the echo of a horn or drum announcing the equinox, sense the presence of something sacred permeating the warm evening air. We leave Almendres with admiration and puzzlement, humanity's deep past made tangible in stone, yet the details of its story out of reach. Heading east across the Mediterranean Sea, our next destination takes us from rings of stones to stone towers. On the island of Sardinia, a later Bronze Age culture erected thousands of megalithic fortresses called Nuraghe that still dot the landscape. Who built these brooding towers, and why so many? Our journey continues to the Nuraghe of Sardinia, another archaeological riddle that science is still striving to explain. Nuraghe of Sardinia, scattered across the rugged hills and plains of Sardinia, are strange stone towers, the remnants of a civilization that thrived over 3,000 years ago and then vanished into legend. These are the Nuraghe, mysterious Bronze Age fortresses or dwellings unique to Sardinia. Over 7,000 Nuraghe towers have been documented on the island. Perhaps there were once as many as 10,000. An astonishing density that means wherever you go in Sardinia's interior, you're likely to spot at least one weathered stone tower on a hill, silently keeping watch. Built between roughly 1900 BCE and 730 BCE, the Nuraghe have become the very symbol of Sardinian heritage. Yet, despite their visibility and number, they pose a colossal enigma. What exactly were they for, and who built them? So far, no written records from the Nuraghic people survive to answer these questions. We are left with the monumental architecture itself, and a scattering of artifacts, from which to piece together a tale of a lost civilization. A typical Nuraghe is like a brooding stone beacon rising out of the landscape. They are usually truncated conical towers, somewhat resembling rounded medieval turrets, made by meticulously stacking large blocks of local stone, basalt, granite, etc., without any mortar. The construction technique is dry stone corbelled architecture. The walls are thick, often 2 to 4 meters thick at the base, built of outer and inner layers of huge stones with a packed rubble core. As the tower rises, the stones are placed slightly inward, gradually narrowing to form a beehive-like tholos dome within. Many Nuraghe were 2 or 3 stories tall. The tallest ones might have reached up to 20 to 30 meters, 65 to 100 feet, high in their prime, rivaling the height of a modern 8 to 10-story building. Think about that. A multi-story stone skyscraper of the Bronze Age, built by a people with no written language, no pulleys or cranes. The largest complex, Nuraxi of Barumini, features a central tower with 4 surrounding bastion towers connected by walls, creating a formidable citadel. UNESCO recognized Nuraxi as a World Heritage Site for being the most complete example of this extraordinary form of prehistoric architecture. Walking into a Nuraghe is like entering a stone time capsule. A narrow entrance passage leads through the thick wall into a central chamber, often circular, where you can look up and see the corbel dome tapering to a capstone far above. In the gloom, there are small window slits, but it's dim inside. You find niches built into the walls, possibly for lamps or offerings. A stone spiral staircase is ingeniously embedded within the wall's thickness, winding up to upper floors or a rooftop terrace. These stairs still exist in many Nuraghe, allowing visitors to climb into the past. As you ascend, you might imagine a Bronze Age lookout, standing on the Nuraghe's roof 3,200 years ago, scanning for distant smoke signals or sails on the Mediterranean Sea. But what were the Nuraghe for? Their design suggests multiple uses have been theorized: fortresses, watchtowers, community refuges, status symbols of chieftains, religious temples, or all of the above. In Sardinian folklore collected later by Romans, there were tales of an ancient race of giants who built the Nuraghe, unsurprising given the gigantic size of the stones. Even today, local legends sometimes refer to them as the homes of giants or fairy houses. Archaeologists lean towards more grounded theories. The earlier simple one-tower Nuraghe likely served as strongholds for clans, places to store food, arms, and to retreat during conflict. Later, more complex Nuraghe, with multiple towers and curtain walls, hint at the development of Nuragic city-states, each centered on a fortified compound. It's believed that by the later Bronze Age, 1200 to 900 BCE, Nuragic society had become quite complex, with villages clustering around the Nuraghe and engaging in Mediterranean trade. Nuragic bronze artifacts have been found in Italy and elsewhere. Excavations at Nuraghe have turned up fireplaces, pottery, animal bones, looms, and other signs of everyday life, indicating people lived or at least gathered within. Some also yielded extraordinary artifacts, beautifully crafted bronze figurines of warriors, animals, and deities, the bronzetti, suggesting ritual significance. Certain Nuraghe sites also have associated structures like meeting huts. One famous example at Santa Cristina has a hut with a stone seat running around it, perhaps a council house, and sacred wells or giant tombs nearby, implying a ceremonial role. Indeed, Sardinia is also peppered with the so-called giants' tombs, megalithic gallery graves, and holy wells aligned to star positions, all part of the Nuragic cultural sphere. It seems Nuraghe were central places in a broad sacred and societal landscape. One specific mystery is the megalithic precision of certain Nuraghe. In some, like Nuraghe Arubiu, the stonework is so neatly fitted it's reminiscent of polygonal masonry, seen in places like Mycenae or even Peru. How did Bronze Age Sardinians quarry, move, and lift such heavy stones? Some blocks weigh several tons, so skillfully. The answer is unknown, no depictions or texts to guide us, but likely they used earthen ramps, wooden scaffolds, ropes, and lots of manpower. The feat is comparable to other great megalithic projects worldwide, indicating an advanced understanding of engineering using only friction and gravity to hold stones together. Another puzzle: why build so many Nuraghe? With thousands across an island not terribly large, one theory is that each small community or extended family constructed its own tower, possibly as a show of wealth or power. The high concentration might indicate a time of internal competition or conflict, each chief trying to outdo his neighbors in building the grandest, tallest stronghold. Or was it that the island had endemic warfare, perhaps over resources or trade routes, necessitating constant vigilance from these lookouts? Ironically, the lack of written records from outside about Sardinia in that era leaves a gap. Aside from a few references, the Egyptians wrote of a seafaring people called the Shurden, who some equate with Nuragic Sardinians, possibly as part of the Sea Peoples around 1200 BCE. We have little context. This only deepens the intrigue. Sardinia's Bronze Age was a world unto itself, leaving monumental architecture but few clues to its politics or people. What ended the Nuragic civilization? By the 8th century BCE, the Nuraghe builders were overshadowed by incoming cultures. First the Phoenicians, who established trading colonies on Sardinian coasts, then the Carthaginians, and later the Romans. It appears that over time, Nuragic society either assimilated with these newcomers or was conquered. The towers were not destroyed en masse. Many simply ceased to be maintained and crumbled. The Romans, practical as ever, sometimes repurposed Nuraghe stones for their own buildings, or even built their structures atop Nuragic ones. By classical times, the origin of the towers was already a mystery, hence legends of giants. Modern archaeology has begun to shed some light. The Nuragic people were skilled sailors. There's evidence they traveled overseas, metal workers, beautiful bronze and iron items, and likely had a stratified society. The scale of cooperation needed to build a Nuraghe implies organized leadership. Yet many details remain shrouded in mystery. For instance, we don't know their language or what they called themselves. We don't know if they had a writing system. No inscriptions survive except possible symbols on pottery. It's an odd thought. Thousands of massive stone towers, but not a single written word left behind. It reminds us how fragile information is compared to stone. Visiting a nuraghe like Santu Antain or La Prigiona, you climb its ancient stairs and emerge onto the summit where ancient warriors may have stood. From that vantage, you can see multiple other nuraghe dotting the horizon. It's easy to imagine smoke signals or fires linking them in communication across the valleys. The wind whistles through the cracks in the stones, and one can sense why locals believe giants built them. There's a certain immensity and roughness that seems beyond human scale. In the underground niches, some have found offerings like seashells or bullhorns, hinting at a religious aspect. Perhaps each nuraghe had a patron god or goddess, and the tower served as both fortress and temple, bringing protection both physical and spiritual to its community. The Nuraghe mystery challenges scientists to piece together history from stones and stray artifacts alone. Bit by bit, we learn, for example, recent studies of pollen and remains suggest Nuragic people cultivated grapes and made wine. The Nuraghe may have been storehouses for grains and goods. Certain alignment of entrances often face southeast, maybe to welcome the sunrise or catch prevailing winds. But plenty of big questions linger, like, did these towers serve as homes for elite families, or were they mostly communal spaces? How were they used in peace versus war? Without clear answers, the imagination fills in the blanks with romantic possibilities of clan chieftains, priestesses performing rites in torch-lit chambers, and archers guarding stony battlements against invaders. As the Mediterranean sun sets over Sardinia, the silhouette of a nuraghe stands black against the orange sky, a time-worn monument to an island of secrets. So many towers, so many questions. The Nuraghe remain an open book in a language we don't yet fully understand, an enduring symbol of mysterious achievement. From Sardinia's prehistoric strongholds, we now journey to the European mainland, where another type of megalithic mystery awaits. While Nuraghe were built above ground, in Spain we find walls of massive stones, whose very existence stirs debate. Could it be that in ancient times, builders in Europe achieved something akin to the famous polygonal masonry of Peru? Our next stop, the so-called megalithic walls of Segovia, Spain, which bear an uncanny resemblance to Inca stone walls, sparking theories about unknown master builders in the distant past. Megalithic walls of Segovia. In central Spain, amid the historic cities and castles, lurk remnants of stonework that don't quite fit the known timeline. Massive, many-sided blocks of stone interlock with uncanny precision, without mortar, in a style oddly reminiscent of the famed polygonal walls of Machu Picchu or Sacsayhuaman in Peru. These are the megalithic walls associated with Segovia and a few other sites on the Iberian Peninsula, sometimes called Cyclopean walls, and they pose a provocative puzzle. Who built them and when? While the medieval walls of Segovia are well documented, certain sections at their base, and similar structures in other Spanish locales like Tarragona, consist of enormous tight-fitting blocks that predate the Middle Ages, possibly by a very long time. Walking along Segovia's old city fortifications, one might notice these giant polygonal stones low in the construction, starkly different from the smaller, regular stones of later eras. The blocks can be over 3 or 4 meters wide, irregularly shaped yet fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle, each joint so snug a knife blade can't slip in. This type of masonry, where multi-angled stones mesh perfectly, is extremely rare in Europe, but appears in a few ancient contexts. For instance, some defensive walls of the Greek Bronze Age or Italian pre-Roman walls. In Spain, the phenomenon is not well studied in mainstream literature, which adds to its mystique. Some have suggested these structures could be pre-Roman foundations built by the indigenous Iberian or Celtiberian peoples, perhaps as early as the Bronze Age. Others wonder if they might be a legacy of some lost civilization that influenced construction techniques across great distances. For example, in Tarragona, ancient Torrico, in Catalonia, the lower portions of the Roman walls include megalithic blocks that experts believe the Romans found and reused, possibly built by the Iberians centuries before. These blocks show a style akin to what archaeologists call Cyclopean, as if crafted by the one-eyed giants of myth. The pieces are not uniform rectangular bricks, but rather each stone has a unique shape with multiple angles, yet all fit together tightly. This construction is not only aesthetically striking, it's also earthquake-resistant, a fact noted in Peru's famous walls. Could ancient Spanish builders have independently developed this technique, or learned it via diffusion from the Mediterranean or beyond? If we focus on Segovia, a city more famous for its Roman aqueduct, local lore occasionally hints that some parts of the city's fortifications sit on mysterious foundations. The walls of Segovia that tourists see today are largely medieval, 11th to 16th century, and made of smaller granite blocks. But imagine if somewhere underlying them are remnants of a far older wall. Some fringe researchers have claimed to identify such sections, though rigorous evidence is scant. It wouldn't be unprecedented. In other parts of Spain, like at Empúries, or Rosal del Sol, archaeologists have found Cyclopean masonry that defies easy explanation, often attributed to early Iron Age or late Bronze Age cultures, but with a whiff of something more advanced for its time. The mystery builders theory suggests that an advanced knowledge of stone construction once spread, in deep antiquity, across disparate cultures, explaining similar techniques in places as far as Spain, Greece, Egypt, Turkey, and Peru. Mainstream archaeology usually attributes each instance to local development or simple practical convergence. Big stones make strong walls. But the resemblances fuel alternative ideas of a lost seafaring civilization. Sometimes Atlantis is invoked, that might have connected them. Segovia's case is often lumped into this speculative realm, with some pointing to it as evidence that Spain had a megalithic building tradition beyond dolmens, one capable of cyclopean feats. What does science say? Thus far, very little in peer-reviewed form about mysterious Segovia walls. However, some references mention that ancient pre-Roman peoples in Spain, the Iberians or Celtiberians, did build some massive walls for their hill forts and towns, using large irregular blocks, for instance at Numantia or Saguntum, later incorporated by Romans. These could be ancestors of what we're seeing. If so, the mystery isn't so much existence as lack of records. We have to guess the purpose and date. They likely served as fortifications for important settlements or temple platforms. Let's conjure a picture. Centuries before Rome, a native Iberian tribe establishes a stronghold on a hill where Segovia now stands. To protect against rivals, they erect a formidable wall of giant stones, quarried and dragged uphill. Perhaps they are aided by knowledge gleaned from travelers, Phoenician merchants or Greek sailors, who showed them new masonry tricks. The wall stands solid through time. Later, Romans or Visigoths or medieval kings find the site ideal and build upon it. They might not even fully know who built the base, but it's convenient and indestructible, so they utilize it. The uncanny precision of these megalithic walls is what captures our imagination. The stones look almost molded to fit, a feat difficult even today. The famous Inca walls in Cusco have the same effect. Some speculate the stones were softened or even melted into place with unknown techniques. For the Iberian walls, no such fantastical method is suspected. It was likely a matter of skilled stone dressing and trial and error fitting by craftsmen who understood stone behavior intimately. Still, seeing this in an unexpected context like Segovia raises an eyebrow. It reminds us that Europe's pre-Roman past still holds surprises. To stand before such a wall, say a section in Tarragona's Old Quarter or a hidden corner of Segovia's Alcazar foundations, is to feel a jolt of anachronism. These blocks should belong to Mycenaean Greece or ancient Peru, not here. And yet, here they are. If only stones could talk. They might tell us of a forgotten chapter of European prehistory, one where local chieftains or engineers mastered the art of polygonal masonry, maybe around the time the Nuraghe were rising in Sardinia, or the megalithic tombs elsewhere were built. But absent that voice, we are left to puzzle and debate. The megalithic walls of Segovia exemplify how, even in well-trodden regions like Europe, there are unexplained structures that challenge the straightforward historical narrative. While mainstream historians may not see a grand mystery here, perhaps just an old Iberian wall, nothing more, the visual impact of these stones on visitors and researchers is undeniable. They suggest a link, real or coincidental, to a broader phenomenon of ancient engineering prowess? In truth, more research is needed. Perhaps future excavations will conclusively date the Cyclopean sections and link them to a known culture. Or maybe they'll remain a historical question mark, fueling fringe theories and tantalizing the curious. For our exploration, they serve as a reminder that even walls can whisper secrets. As we trace our fingers along the megalithic seams, we wonder, did knowledge of stonecraft travel farther and earlier than we think? What other surprises lie beneath Europe's medieval and modern foundations? From Europe's western frontiers, our odyssey leaps far to the east, because mysterious megaliths are a global phenomenon. Half a world away in Northeast Asia, an entirely different culture was moving giant stones, creating monuments that baffle historians. The Dolmens of Korea and Manchuria. These table-like megalithic tombs are so numerous that Korea is called the dolmen capital of the world, and many date back before the rise of any recorded Chinese dynasties. Our journey continues to those distant lands, where yet another ancient mystery in stone awaits. Dolmens of Korea and Manchuria. Across the landscapes of Korea and Manchuria, northeast China, one finds strange table-like stone structures dotting hillsides and river valleys. These are dolmens, megalithic tombs composed of huge flat capstones balanced on upright stones, often looking like giant stone tables. Remarkably, over 40% of all the world's dolmens are found on the Korean peninsula. South Korea alone has around 30,000 identified dolmens, with another 10,000 to 15,000 in North Korea, and thousands more in the adjacent regions of Manchuria, like Jilin and Liaoning provinces, where ancient Korean and Proto-Korean cultures once spread. This is an incredible concentration. By comparison, famous dolmen regions like Western Europe have only in the hundreds or low thousands. The sheer number raises immediate questions. Who built them and why here? And how could prehistoric people, armed with only rudimentary tools, move slabs of stone weighing in many cases 50 to 80 tons to create these monuments? Korean dolmens, called goendol in Korean, typically date to the Bronze Age, roughly between 1000 BCE and 300 BCE, though some may be older. That time frame indeed makes many of them older than the earliest Chinese dynasties that recorded history knows. The Shang dynasty began around 1600 BCE, hence the saying that these tombs predate or are as old as China's oldest states. In fact, the dolmen tradition in Northeast Asia likely began by 1500 BCE, or earlier, during a time when the region was populated by tribal societies transitioning from Neolithic to Bronze culture. This was before any writing in Korea, so the builders left no written names or chronicles, only stones and artifacts. Dolmens were burial markers. Beneath or around these megaliths, archaeologists often find burial pits or chambers containing grave goods like pottery, jade beads, arrowheads, and sometimes skeletal remains. Though in Korea's acidic soils, bones often disintegrate. The variety suggests they were tombs for elite individuals, perhaps chiefs or clan leaders, making the dolmens a kind of status symbol as well as a ritual monument. There are two main styles of dolmen in Korea: table type, northern style, and go-board type, southern style. The northern type, more common in Manchuria and northern Korea, has two or more upright stones supporting a large flat capstone, looking very much like a raised table. These can be massive. For instance, some in Manchuria have capstones weighing over 40 tons lifted a meter or more off the ground. The southern type often has the capstone sitting directly on a mound or very low supports, covering a pit, more like a giant mushroom. The existence of these styles might indicate cultural differences or evolution over time. Regardless of type, constructing any dolmen was an enormous task. Likely, communities used earthen ramps to drag a boulder up and onto the support stones, or employed logs and rope in a concerted group effort. Even with dozens or hundreds of people, it would have been perilous and backbreaking. That they did it tens of thousands of times speaks to a strong cultural imperative. Honoring the dead in this way was crucial to their society. Why so many dolmens in Korea? One theory is that as Bronze Age chiefdoms emerged, competition among elites led to a sort of arms race in tomb building. Each chief wanted a larger, more impressive dolmen to legitimize power or appease ancestors. Korea may have also had abundant suitable stone in certain areas, like Jeollanam province's granite, and relatively flat plains where moving big stones was feasible. Interestingly, many Korean dolmens align in groups or clusters, possibly marking ancient village sites or territories of clans. They are sometimes aligned in rows or following ridges, and some alignments have been hypothesized to track celestial events or cardinal directions, though evidence of a strict astronomical alignment is not strong as it is at places like Stonehenge. Still, one can't rule out that seasonal rituals took place around these tombs. Imagine Bronze Age people conducting ceremonies at dolmen sites at certain times of year, perhaps to honor ancestors, the likely occupants of the tombs, and seek their protection for harvests or warfare. The mystery extends beyond construction to culture. The people who built the dolmens of Korea and Manchuria had no writing system that we know of. They are often associated with the Mumin pottery period in Korea and corresponding cultures in Liaoning, which means they were agricultural, likely had social stratification, and possibly spoke languages ancestral to Korean or other Tungusic languages. But they remain essentially prehistoric. We draw from later legends to guess at their beliefs. One Korean myth tells of Dangun, the founder of the first Korean kingdom, Gojoseon, around 2333 BCE, legendary, which is too early for most dolmens, but indicates the deep-rooted idea of an ancient civilization. Some wonder if dolmens might be connected to the legendary Old Joseon or other early kingdoms. Could they mark the tombs of those early kings or heroes mentioned only in myth? No one knows for sure. Dolmens also spark the imagination because of their global resonance. Similar structures exist in Europe, India, and elsewhere, but Korea's are later and more numerous. This was long after the era of worldwide mega-monuments, like pyramids, so unlikely to be a connected phenomenon, more a case of independent invention. Yet, when Westerners first encountered Korean dolmens, some speculated fancifully that perhaps the builders of Stonehenge had somehow traveled east, or vice versa. While not taken seriously today, it underscores how intriguing it is that cultures separated by continents all gravitated to the idea of raising huge stones for tombs. In modern times, Korean dolmens have received recognition. Several clusters are UNESCO World Heritage Sites for their archaeological value. At places like Gochang, Hwasun, and Ganghwa Island, one can walk among fields of dolmens. In Ganghwa, for example, there's the Chief's Dolmen, an enormous capstone estimated around 80 tons, propped waist-high, one of the biggest in the world. Standing there, you can't help but marvel at how a pre-machine society could even budget the human muscle and time for such a feat. One theory suggests they might have used the winter ice, dragging stones more easily over ice roads, or leveraging seasonal changes. Another idea, using a combination of ropes, wooden frames, and earthen ramps to inch the rock up bit by bit. Without written instructions left behind, archaeologists have experimented with small-scale models, but a full replica move of a 50-ton stone by volunteers hasn't been done to fully demonstrate the process. That would be a sight. The purpose of the dolmens as tombs is clear from excavations, but there's mystery in the details. For instance, in some dolmens, very few remains are found, or sometimes none, possibly due to soil acidity dissolving bones, or were these cenotaphs, symbolic tombs, for those lost elsewhere? Some dolmens have goods from quite far away, indicating trade networks or exchange, e.g., jade from Manchuria found in Korean tombs. This suggests an interlinked culture over a wide region venerating ancestors in similar ways. It's fascinating that this megalithic tradition might have spread across ancient Northeast Asia. Did it have a point of origin? Some propose the idea traveled from the west via steppe cultures or from the south, but the evidence is thin. It might simply be that as societies grew, the idea of building bigger tombs for leaders emerged independently. What about local folklore regarding dolmens? Korean folktales don't explicitly mention dolmens often, perhaps because their original purpose was forgotten, but sometimes they are called jiseong, stone tables, or associated with legendary strongmen who could lift rocks. In rural areas, some dolmens were feared as haunted by the spirits of the entombed, so people avoided disturbing them. In the 20th century, unfortunately, many dolmens were broken or removed during land development before laws protected them, which shows that until recently, they were seen more as curiosities than treasured relics. Today, scientists continue to study dolmen sites with new methods. Ground-penetrating radar, for example, to find burial pits without heavy digging. Perhaps they will uncover inscriptions or carvings that were missed, or alignments that reveal a calendar function. For now, the dolmens remain impressively mute, giant stone puzzles on the Korean landscape. They speak of a society that could mobilize tremendous labor in the name of honoring their dead and asserting status. The mystery, at its heart, is not only how they did it, but what social or spiritual drive compelled them to. Did they believe the massive stones would ensure the dead's comfort in the afterlife, or that the ancestor spirits anchored by these stones would protect the land and people, possibly both? As we ponder these questions under the shadow of a Korean dolmen at dusk, it's easy to feel a connection to those ancient mourners and builders. The concept of remembering and glorifying our dead is universal. Here, it took the form of monumental stone architecture that has outlasted the memory of those it was built for. In that sense, the dolmen builders achieved a kind of immortality. Their works still stand, stirring the imaginations of distant future generations. Our journey through megalithic enigmas now guides us back west and into the earth itself, from stones raised to the sky to a wonder hidden deep underground. In the heart of the Mediterranean, on the small island of Malta, lies a subterranean monument as perplexing as any, a multi-level maze of chambers known as the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum. There, ancient people carved an entire temple out of bedrock, complete with eerie acoustics and mysterious burials. A final stop in Europe's vault of secrets, where the line between the living and the dead blurs in whispered echoes. Hal Saflieni Hypogeum. On the island of Malta, amid modern towns and streets, a doorway leads down into darkness, into a realm carved out thousands of years ago and steeped in mystery. This is the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, an underground necropolis and temple that is unlike any other place on Earth. Discovered by accident in 1902, when workers cutting cisterns fell through into a hollow chamber, the Hypogeum revealed itself as a sprawling labyrinth of carved rock, a three-level complex of halls, chambers, and passages hewn directly into Malta's limestone bedrock. It dates back to the Neolithic period, circa 4000 to 2500 BCE, contemporary with the island's above-ground megalithic temples, making it around 5,000 years old. As the only known prehistoric underground temple in the world, it poses many questions. Who built this hidden sanctuary, and why? What rituals took place in its depths? And what explains the unsettling discoveries made within? Descending into the Hypogeum is like entering a sculpted underworld. The upper level begins just below street level, but soon you find yourself in chambers 30+ feet, over 10 meters underground on the lowest level. The spaces are carefully fashioned. Some are roughly rectangular rooms with carved pillars and lintels imitating built architecture, as if the builders wanted to recreate their above-ground stone temples in an underworld setting. Others are more cavernous or irregular. The rock walls in places are smoothed and even painted with red ochre spiral patterns, remnants of Neolithic art. The most famous room, often called the Oracle Room, is a small side chamber where a person's voice can resonate astonishingly loudly at a particular frequency, an acoustic effect likely used intentionally in ceremonies. Experiments show that a deep male voice chanting in that room, around 110 Hz frequency, reverberates throughout the Hypogeum, creating a trance-inducing hum. Researchers speculate the Hypogeum's builders understood these acoustic properties. A priest or shaman's voice could boom as if from everywhere at once, perhaps simulating the voice of a deity or oracle. The fact that this frequency, 110 Hz, has known effects on the human brain, promoting relaxation or altered states, is a chilling testament to their sophistication. One can imagine a ritual. In near darkness, lit by flickering oil lamps, a chant begins in the oracle room, and the entire complex hums like a giant bell, enveloping participants in sound. It must have been otherworldly, a literal echo chamber of the gods. Yet, the Hypogeum was also a place of the dead. As archaeologists carefully explored the chambers, they found the floors littered or filled with human bones, the remains of perhaps over 7,000 individuals. Many were disarticulated, likely due to the practice of collective burial over centuries, where earlier bones were moved aside to make room for new bodies. Some skeletons were in strange contorted positions, implying perhaps ritual placement or secondary burial rites. But the most unsettling find was a subset of skulls that were not quite normal. These elongated skulls, dolichocephalic skulls, had an abnormally long cranium and, curiously, missing cranial sutures, the joints that typically fuse skull plates. Their appearance was so peculiar that early reports sparked wild theories that they might belong to a distinct human subspecies or an unknown race that lived on Malta and vanished. Some even whispered of alien visitors. More sober minds proposed they might result from artificial cranial deformation, head binding, a practice in some cultures to elongate skulls, though the missing sutures were hard to explain by binding. The mystery deepened when, in the mid-20th century, most of these anomalous skulls were removed from public display and reportedly went missing, fueling conspiracies that perhaps something scientifically disruptive was found. Today, only a few remain in archives, and the issue remains unresolved due to the lack of modern study. Were they just an unusual genetic trait in a small Maltese population, or ritual deformations signifying elite or priestly status? Either way, their presence adds a creepy aura to the Hypogeum's legacy. The combination of death and possible ritual in the Hypogeum suggests it was a necropolis with a strong spiritual dimension. Unlike a plain burial cave, it was carefully architected. The effort to cut through solid limestone with flint and bone tools must have been enormous, likely spanning generations. The Hypogeum's design even mimics alignment patterns, though underground, its architects still oriented sections in concert with celestial events. For instance, an opening in an upper chamber aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, funneling light into the depth on that day. A guess supported by some researchers, but difficult to observe now due to the structure around it. If true, it means the Hypogeum was not just a tomb, but a cosmic machine like the great above-ground megalithic sites, aligning life, death, and the heavens. Who built the Hypogeum and why? The mainstream view is that it was the work of Malta's temple culture, a Neolithic civilization that erected the famous megalithic temples on the islands, like Hagarsim, Manchuria, Tarxien, between 3,600 to 2,500 BCE. Those are the oldest freestanding stone structures known. The Hypogeum would be their unique subterranean extension. Perhaps an answer to the question, if the temples above were houses of life, or ceremonial centers, where do we commune with the dead? Answer: deep in the earth, in the womb of the mother. Some hypothesize a mother goddess cult. Supporting this connection, one of the finest artifacts found in the Hypogeum is the Sleeping Lady statuette, a clay figure of a corpulent woman reclining as if in eternal sleep, possibly a representation of a mother goddess or a priestess in trance. It was found in a niche, maybe an offering for regeneration of the dead, or a representation of death itself as a sleeping state. Yet, there are whispers of something even older at play. Some theorists speculate that the Hypogeum predates the recognized temple period, that it might be a legacy of an earlier, lost people. The unusual skulls are cited as evidence by proponents of this idea. They suggest Malta's temple builders may have inherited the Hypogeum from predecessors and repurposed it. While intriguing, this is not mainstream and awaits concrete evidence. One cannot discuss the Hypogeum without mentioning the local legends it spawned. Early 20th century Maltese folklore, influenced by the Hypogeum's discovery, spoke of an entire underworld beneath Malta, a labyrinth of tunnels extending for miles, connecting to other cave systems, perhaps even going under the sea. A sensational but unfounded story told of a school outing in the 1940s where children entered the Hypogeum and got lost in deeper tunnels, never to return. While likely apocryphal, and indeed newspaper embellishment, it underscores the sense of fearful awe the site inspired, a place where one could literally vanish into the bowels of the earth, Even today, not all parts of the hypogeum are fully explored or excavated, giving fuel to these ideas of undiscovered passages and chambers beyond. What we do know is that by around 2500 BCE, both the hypogeum and the above-ground temples were sealed and abandoned. Perhaps an unknown crisis or cultural shift caused the temple culture's collapse. Malta may have been depopulated for a time after 2300 BCE, possibly due to environmental stress or invasion. The hypogeum lay in silence, filled with its dead, for millennia. It did its job well, preserving a slice of prehistory that, when uncovered, astonished the modern world. Visiting the hypogeum today, in tightly controlled small groups to protect it, one feels a profound, eerie tranquility. The air is cool and still. In the faint light, one sees carved doorways and alcoves, red ochre spirals on the ceiling like petrified smoke from ancient fires. When the guide demonstrates the acoustic by intoning a single syllable, the entire cavern sings. In those moments, time slips away. You can imagine shamans chanting and drums beating in some funerary rite, the sound swelling and echoing until it feels like spirits might materialize from the walls. It's not a leap to think the hypogeum was intentionally designed to blur the line between the living and the dead. Those who entered likely sought to communicate with ancestors or gods in the dark, resonant chambers beneath the earth. Perhaps they believed that by going into the womb of Mother Earth, they could experience a rebirth or gain prophetic visions. We may never know their exact beliefs, but the physical evidence, the bones, the art, the architecture, all speak to a deeply spiritual purpose beyond just interment. The hypogeum stands as a testament to human ingenuity and the human spirit's quest for meaning in life and death. It's an engineering marvel, a multi-story complex carved with bone tools, a mass graveyard, and a possible temple of sound and darkness all in one. And importantly, it underscores how much we have yet to understand. Entire belief systems and practices that left no written word but can still be felt in places like this. As we emerge from Hal Saflieni's depths, blinking in the Maltese sunlight, we reflect on how many rich mysteries the ancient world still holds. Our voyage through Europe and the Mediterranean's enigmas, from Carnac's stone rose to Malta's echoing caves, has shown that science can examine and date and hypothesize, but some secrets persist beyond our full grasp. Yet, each site tells us a story in its own silent language of stone, of people long gone, of their fears, hopes, and brilliance, inviting us to marvel and to seek answers, however elusive. Before we conclude, one more journey beckons. To the eastern fringes of the Fertile Crescent, in the deserts of Iran stands what might be one of the world's oldest step pyramids, Tepe Sialk. Older than Babylon, nearly as old as the first Egyptian pyramids, this eroded ziggurat holds clues to the dawn of civilization. In our final chapter, we travel there to see how early humans began reaching for the sky by building upward, creating the prototypes of the great ziggurats and pyramids to come. Another mystery in mud brick, awaiting its story to be told. Tepe Sialk Ziggurat. In the central Iranian plateau, near the city of Kashan, two dusty hills rise incongruously from the flat surrounding plain. They are not natural mounds, but the accumulated layers of ancient settlements. This site is Tepe Sialk, and within one of those hills lies the crumbling core of what may be the oldest ziggurat, stepped pyramid, in the world. Long before the famous ziggurats of Mesopotamia like Ur or the Grand Pyramids of Egypt, the people of Sialk built a terraced platform that is staggering for its age. The Sialk ziggurat was erected around 3000 BCE, roughly 5,000 years ago, contemporaneous with the very earliest cities on Earth. To put that in perspective, this earthen pyramid predates the ziggurats of Babylon by over a millennium. It stands as a quiet reminder that the impulse to build upward, to create a sacred mountain where there was none, was present at the dawn of civilization. Today, Tepe Sialk doesn't look like a pristine pyramid. What you see is an eroded, sun-baked hill of mud brick, with remnants of rectilinear walls and staircases barely discernible. Millennia of wind and rain have softened its edges. Grass and shrubs now cling to its sides. But archaeologists have identified it as a two-stage ziggurat, a lower terrace and an upper platform where a temple likely stood. It was constructed by a people linked to the early Elamite civilization, which thrived in what is now Iran around that time. The Elamites were neighbors and sometime rivals to the Sumerians of Mesopotamia. While Sumer had the earliest writing and cities, Elam and related cultures were not far behind. Sialk shows that urban life and complex society were blossoming in multiple places concurrently. Excavations at Tepe Sialk have revealed that it was a site of continuous human habitation going back to around 6000 BCE, making it one of the oldest known settlements in Iran. The bottom layers, Sialk 1 and 2, feature simple mud huts and early pottery, evidence of a Neolithic village. Over the centuries, the settlement grew more sophisticated. By around 4000 to 3500 BCE, in the Sialk 3 period, there were rectangular mud brick houses, craft production, and trade. The real leap came in Sialk 4, roughly 3200 to 2800 BCE, when the inhabitants undertook building the Ziggurat. Why did they build it? Most likely as a temple platform, a raised sanctum for worshiping their gods, away from the profane ground. This concept mirrors what was happening in Sumer, like the platform temples at Eridu or Uruk, suggesting a broad trend. Early civilizations built artificial mountains to bridge earth and heaven, to make a stage where priests could perform rituals visible to the populace and closer to the sky. Imagine Sialk in its heyday, a bustling proto-city with modest homes and workshops around, and at its center a towering tiered platform of mud brick, brightly decorated with perhaps painted plaster. A grand stairway leads to its summit, where a shrine to a god, maybe the Elamite sky god or a mother goddess, sits. On special days, robed priests ascend, carrying offerings, while common people gather below, eyes uplifted. Smoke from incense or burnt offerings wafts from the temple, drifting over the plain. This would have been a potent symbol of communal identity and religious fervor, a monument visible from afar on the flat landscape, reassuring people of the god's presence and the leader's ability to harness labor and skill. The engineering of Sialk's Ziggurat is impressive for its time. They use sun-dried mud bricks, thousands upon thousands of them, some of the earliest bricks known. These bricks held up remarkably well. The fact that any recognizable structure still exists 5,000 years later is a marvel. They likely had to reinforce and maintain it continually. There's evidence of multiple construction phases. Perhaps the platform started smaller and was expanded or heightened over generations. This indicates Sialk remained important long enough to invest in such renovations. One of the intrigues of Sialk is how it fits, or doesn't, into the broader narrative of civilization. For a long time, textbooks emphasized Mesopotamia and Egypt as the cradles. Sialk and other Iranian sites like Chogha Zanbil, a later giant Elamite ziggurat, 1250 BCE, show that Iran had its own early monumental tradition. Was Sialk an isolated beacon or part of a network? Given findings of artifacts, we know Sialk was in contact with other regions. Items like turquoise, lapis lazuli, and engraved seals found at Sialk hint at trade with distant lands, lapis likely from Afghanistan. A copper smelting workshop was discovered, evidence that Sialk's people were early metallurgists. They also had a form of proto-writing. Some pottery from Sialk has symbols that might be primitive accounting or ownership marks. Mysteries remain. The very people of Sialk, what did they call themselves? We don't know, no deciphered texts. Why did their city ultimately decline? It seems Sialk was abandoned for a long period after 2500 BCE, possibly due to climate shifts or migrations. Some theorize that the Sialk people moved and became part of the Elamite states to the southwest, or were absorbed by new groups moving in from the Caspian or Central Asia. By 2000 BCE, new settlements with different pottery appeared, so a cultural turnover occurred. A striking artifact from Sialk's final phases is a 3,700-year-old clay tablet found there, apparently with early Elamite script. It's one of the earliest pieces of writing in Iran, however, it's scarce. Literacy may not have been widespread or preserved, thus the voices of Sialk's inhabitants are effectively mute, leaving us to interpret their story through archaeology alone. Wandering on Tepe Sialk today, One has to use imagination to see past what looks like lumps of clay. There are trenches from archaeologists Roman Gershman's excavations in the 1930s, and some signboards. If you run your hand on the exposed brick layers, you're touching fabrications made by human hands 5 millennia past. Tiny shards of painted pottery crunch underfoot. Perhaps a piece of someone's bowl or vase. The place doesn't have the grandeur of well-preserved ruins, but what it has is age. Sialk is primordial. You might reflect that at the time Sialk's pyramid stood, Stonehenge's stones hadn't been erected yet. The Great Pyramids were still 500 years in the future. And in the Indus Valley, cities were just beginning to coalesce. It belonged to the very first chapter of urban experiments. Tepe Sialk's mystery is partly that it isn't famous, a gem hiding in plain sight of history. Why was it forgotten? Perhaps because mud brick doesn't impress as much as stone. It literally melts back into the earth. Or due to political borders. Much of early civilization focus went to Mesopotamia in Iraq, overshadowing parallel Iranian developments. Now, researchers are giving Sialk another look, trying to ensure its preservation. It's under threat from the elements and nearby development. New digs have uncovered an ancient water irrigation system, evidence of advanced planning in an arid environment. This suggests Sialk's people engineered solutions to farming in a dry climate, a forerunner of techniques later seen in Persia. Culturally, one can ask, did Sialk influence later monumental architecture? Could it be that the concept of the Ziggurat traveled west to Sumer, or was it parallel evolution? The Elamite connection is key. Elam had proto-ziggurats and heavily influenced Mesopotamia at times. Some legends, unproven, say that when Babylon's legendary Tower of Babel was conceived, knowledge of Elamite structures might have been considered. It's poetic to think Sialk might be a distant ancestor of all such human-made sacred mountains. In terms of unanswered questions, what deity was worshipped at Sialk's summit? We have some clues. Elamites later worshipped a pantheon, including Inshushinak, a chief god, Kirarisha, a mother goddess, and others. Perhaps Sialk's people venerated a form of those. No statues or clear idols were found on the pyramid, possibly taken when the site was abandoned, or they were organic, like wooden and decayed. Tepe Sialk stands stoic under the desert sun, a testament to human ambition at the threshold of history. It reminds us that civilization did not sprout in one valley alone, but in many places at once, interconnected in ways we are still deciphering. For all our modern knowledge, the origins of our complex societies still have dark corners. Sialk is one such twilight zone, giving us just enough to be intrigued, not enough to be satisfied.